Hey, it's Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. Playoff game started this weekend. Obviously, it did not involve Jacksonville. We're going to take a look at how those teams played and how far the Jaguars have to go, and also a little bit of a look at Byron Leftwich after his performance yesterday, along with Doug Peterson, who did not coach, but he's still on the horizon. Go check this out here on a Monday here on Locked On Jaguars. Stand by.
Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up? I'm Tony Wiggins, better known as T-Wig, welcoming you to the Monday edition of Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, and we thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Playoffs got going this weekend. A lot of debate over the seventh team and people going back and forth about whether it's necessary, and we'll get into a little bit of that, but this is a Jaguar-centric show, so we'll make sure that we hit the Jags first. It was a big weekend in terms of watching playoff teams play, watching how the stakes have gone up and to see who can respond. You saw some efforts from some teams this weekend that really make you think and challenge you to understand exactly how far the Jaguars have to go. Now, I'm going to set aside the Eagles with that because the Eagles obviously looked like they were in over their heads yesterday against the Bucs. And I want to set aside the Patriots because they had a 50-burger put on them. But we really can't do that because the Patriots put a 50-burger on Jacksonville, it seems, just a couple of weeks ago. And how could that team that dismantled the Jaguars that way just 2 weeks ago get dismantled in the playoffs? And then they got dismantled by a team that Jacksonville actually beat. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. If you're a 3-win team, you're a 3-win team regardless. You could have beat the top 3 seeds in the league, but if you lose the other 14 games, it doesn't matter. So the Jaguars have a very, very long way to go. We're going to discuss, too, who's going to be the best candidate to get the Jaguars over the hump. And how do you get that consistency? And I think it's going to require some patience. So we'll talk about that. Byron Leftwich had an interesting game yesterday. We're going to discuss him in the second segment because Leftwich and Bruce Arians are known as, well, Bruce Arians is known as a vertical coach. Because of the injuries to the Bucs, they had to get the ball out of their hands very quickly and use running backs. They're on their third, fourth, and fifth running back. They were down a couple of linemen. They were down a couple of wide receivers. Did not matter. They put the game plan into motion and did a very, very good job. And Byron's starting to pick up steam when you talk to people around here about the possibility of him being the Jaguars head coach. Somebody who didn't coach yesterday is Doug Peterson. And Doug Peterson is thought of very highly by me, and I know some other people too. And the reason why is because you've actually seen what we always talk about, demonstrated performance. You've actually seen Doug Peterson in action. Do something that you think is going to have to happen here. They're going to have to overcome history like they did in Philadelphia, having never won anything. They're going to have to probably end up beating people that they're not supposed to beat. They're going to need some good luck. And then they're going to have to overcome injuries. And that's exactly what Doug Peterson did when he was with Philadelphia and won a title. Now, we can talk about the things that happened after that, too, because obviously if a guy does all of that stuff and then he gets fired, it leaves you to wonder, how bad could it actually been? It has to be really bad that you fire a guy 2 years later who won a Super Bowl for you. So we'll discuss that as well. The Jags have a long, long way to go, and it's going to require a lot of patience for everyone in this city. The one team that I watched yesterday in terms of knowing who they are and having an identity is the 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers, to me, are the one team where they didn't go out and attempt to guess and have to feel their way through a process, even though they kind of slowed down a little bit and Jimmy Garoppolo made one mistake and almost cost the 49ers a game against the Cowboys. And the 49ers started to get banged up a little bit and lose some guys to injury. Fred Warner went out late in the game in a critical point, and Joey Bosa, who was totally unblockable, also left the game with a concussion after running to his own player. but they were able to overcome it. And the reason why they were able to overcome it is because they know who they are. And Garoppolo is not as good as Trevor in terms of long-term effect, but they do a good job. And I mentioned this to someone yesterday. They do a really good job of drafting their type of guy, their sort of player to fit what they do. Now, it doesn't mean that they ignore talent either. They get talented guys that fit what they do mentally, psychologically, in the way that they know how to play with a high IQ. So those are the things that I think Jacksonville has to do. When you watched Byron Leftwich with the Bucs yesterday, and the way they went so surgical early in the game with the mixing of the run and the pass and the short passes, you realize these teams actually don't go out here and throw darts and just throw stuff against the wall to see what sticks. Over the years, we've heard terms like "let's get crazy." That's a Prince song. Let's go crazy. You don't get crazy and just try stuff in the National Football League. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. And I know people think that it's easy to have a plan when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback. But anybody that says that, they're ignoring the fact that Tom Brady continues to give praise to Byron Leftwich. Sometimes it's hard to coach a guy who played, and you played the same position, and he happens to be the greatest of all time. Imagine the type of communicator you have to have that guy be willing to listen to you and give you credit. I always tell you guys, communication is a big, big part of coaching in the National Football League these days. So instead of people looking at that situation and not giving Byron Leftwich credit, I think it's a reason to give him credit because he's coaching the greatest quarterback ever, and he has the command and he has the presence that guy wants to listen to him. And I think that that's a big guy. We got guys that can't even play that won't listen to people because they don't trust them. And you get the guy who's the best ever at, probably in team sports, at least football, and he's sitting there listening to you, and you're Byron Leftwich. I think that actually looks good for you and not bad for you. So we ain't going to make a good thing a bad thing. Here's what I want to explore, though. I want to explore in the next segment. What timetable do you think the Jaguar fans will give either Byron Leftwich or Doug Peterson? And those are the two guys that I'm focusing on today. What timetable? Is it a different timetable for both of those guys? I'm going to discuss that. And then in the third segment, it is Martin Luther King's birthday, and we are celebrating that holiday. I'm going to tell you what that really means to me and the perspective and why it's important to pay attention to perspective when you celebrate days like today, and you absolutely want things to continue to be better for the future. So we're going to take a look at all of that stuff, and we'll do it in just a second here on a Monday edition, a Martin Luther King birthday edition of Locked On Jaguars. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good. You'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky, waxy, and taste like a chemical spill. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3, you might be thinking, this is just not worth it. Where's the chocolate? Well, I'll tell you where the chocolate is. It's on Built Bars, and they're covered with 100% chocolate. They have about 130 calories with 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. It's a powerful pack of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can just at least eat something good and healthy that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout because everyone tells me you cannot outwork a bad diet. Here's the offer. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Once again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And we welcome you back here, making it your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. Gonna push through segment 2 here. Right now, I would say that around the league and around people that I know, the two guys that everyone is really, really focusing on for the Jaguars are Byron Leftwich and Doug Peterson. Peterson is a former coach, Super Bowl winning coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, who has been out of coaching now for about a year, but is known as a tough guy, He played quarterback in the league. He came from the Andy Reid tree, and he absolutely uh, is a guy that does really intrigue Jaguar fans as a potential coach for this team. And it's because he has a reputation of being able to get the most out of quarterbacks. He has a reputation of being tough, but someone that people really want to play for. Guys in Philly really love playing for him. Ran through a brick wall for him. He galvanized that team. You remember the whole Meek Mill song playing, Dreams and Nightmares. He galvanized that team to go heads up against the Patriots and drop over 40 on them in the Super Bowl when Belichick had all of that time to prepare. And he did it with Nick Foles, and the team did it with an identity. And once you see someone do that, you give them cachet that you don't give someone who you haven't seen doing it. Byron Leftwich has been pretty much calling the plays, and Bruce Arians says that he trusts Byron Leftwich. There's one thing I'm afraid of with Leftwich, and it has nothing to do with him being Jaguars coach. It's just that Arians keeps talking like if he loses Leftwich, he's going to retire. And if the Bucks brass goes to Leftwich and says, hey, he's going to retire if he leaves, so why don't you just stay and become the coach? That's what I'm a little bit afraid of that'll happen with the Byron candidacy, because he's not going to be named the coach until they lose a game, and they might not lose one. They might win the whole thing. So I'm a little bit afraid that he could be coaxed into staying because of Arians' age, that Byron could be coaxed into staying with Tampa. But at this point, the question I have is, in those two scenarios, who's given more patience? And I think in that situation, you'd have to give Byron Leftwich more patience than you would Doug Peterson, because Doug Peterson has shown you that he could turn this thing around really quickly, whereas Byron Leftwich, more people would likely be more patient with him and say, you know what, he's a first-time head coach. Even though we want to see steady improvement, one of the things that we will do is give him time to get his program involved and get his feet up under him. I think people would expect this team to go almost 500 next year with Doug Peterson. And by year 2 under Doug Peterson, which will be year 3 under Trevor Lawrence, they're going to be expecting to win a playoff game, because Doug Peterson has kind of done that thing before. Is that a good thing? Don't know, but expectations are one thing. I just think Jaguar fans just want to see someone play better. And when you watch the football that you saw this weekend, for the most part, I just think the Jaguars want to see competence and a plan. Even if you don't win the game, you had a plan and you allowed your talent, and you had guys that were making plays all over the field. So I do think that both of those guys are really good candidates. And I think Shad, am I going to sit here and say he's done a great job doing this process? No, because I think he should have got rid of Trent Baalke. But I will tell you that there's a good group of candidates, and there's a good list of people, and those two guys that we keep mentioning are right at the top of the board. I'm really impressed. I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with Byron, because I know what type of coach Bruce Arians is and what type of offense Bruce Arians has always run. And I'm really excited about the fact that Byron and those crew, because of the injuries to Lenny and Rojo and the running back, of course, Godwin and AB not being there. And then yesterday on the offensive line, they had guys getting banged up. They really made adjustments offensively and did what they had to do to win with backup football players. So it just shows you that everybody on that roster counts. And this is what the Jaguars have to stop doing. Filling the back of their rosters up with guys who are just special teams guys or just a dude. Everybody has to be able to play when you call their number. Look at that Vaughn kid yesterday at running back. That dude looked like he's been running the ball all year for Tampa Bay. I don't like having teams where you just have guys on the roster and they're sort of just like guys who are collecting a check and helping you in practice and maybe being a special teams guy here or there. These teams have guys who they depend on. There were receivers catching the ball yesterday for Tampa. I had no idea who these dudes were. None. Everybody on that roster has a job, and it's next man up. And I do think that you can wonder whether or not Byron is responsible, is the reason for Tampa doing better and being who they are. But you can also understand that he doesn't have to be. in order to benefit from it and learn from the situation, that he was a part of it. And being a part of something like that, it probably makes it a little bit easier for you to be able to do it somewhere else because you know what it looks like. It'll be fun to see the staff. It'll be fun to see what staff both of those guys have. Obviously, you can draw lines with from Doug Peterson. You can draw lines to Jim Nagy. You can draw lines to anybody that's ever coached for him before or they've crossed paths with. And I'll be interested to see if either one of those guys retains Joe Cullen. And I really would be interested in seeing if either one of those guys really rejects the idea of working with Trent Baalke. I think that's a pretty big deal. Okay, what I'm going to do is on this little bit of an abbreviated show, I'm going to talk to you about today and what today means for me, especially in the with the prism that we're looking at the NFL coaching search and these jobs that are out there. I'll use that, but really today's day is much bigger for me, and I'll try to give you a little bit of perspective about the King holiday and what it actually means to me. And I'll use time. I'll use chronological time to tell you exactly what I mean. I'll do that in just a second here on the third and final segment of Locked On Jaguars. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue to march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And we are where you start every day here on Locked On Jaguars because you make us your first listen, and we are grateful. We are also grateful to let you know that we are free on all platforms, so make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and everywhere else you get your podcast. And make the Locked On Bets podcast your second listen of the day, because before you make your wager, you need to listen to your boy Q and analyst Lee Sterling to make sure that you get all the pertinent information you need to win you some scratch and some Skrilla on making your bets. What does the day mean for a guy like me, Anthony Wiggins, who grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and Washington, D.C., born in 1969, born right at the end and the tip of the civil rights movement. And it's a special day, but it's also a bittersweet special day. And I'll tell you why here. There are a lot of times when we're talking about patience and change, we're talking about in football. I just asked you guys who get the benefit of the doubt for the Jaguars to really be successful and what it would take for them to start being really consistent. That's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication and a lot of things that have to go right. Well, you know what? Life deals you hands like that too. And what I mean by that is there are lots of folks that believe that all of the changes that have been necessary over the last 50 or 60 years should have led to more advancement for African Americans in sports and just in life in general. And I tell you that that's just one generation or 1.5 generations. And no other time in history have we ever expected those generations or that 1.5 of generations to change anything. If you look at throughout history, nothing changes that fast. And if you don't think it hasn't been that long, I'll explain this to you. Back in the early 80s, I believe it was 1982 or 1983, it may have been 1981 or 82, Stevie Wonder made a song, a birthday song to Martin Luther King. And he was making the song trying to employ those that are in the Congress and the Senate to make the Dr. King's birthday a holiday. And this is about 16 years after his death, 15, 16 years after his death. And it didn't pass the law. It didn't pass in the law to 1986. To put that in context, I was a senior in high school in 1986. And I used to ask my grandmother, I used to wonder, why are we begging people to honor such a great man? And why won't people admit that he needs to be honored the way that they are now? I tell those stories to my kids. And I think it's very important not to make them angry, not to make them upset, but to make them understand the context that you can try to change the world, but it takes time. It doesn't mean that you need to stop pushing. It doesn't mean that you need to stop pressing forward. What it does mean is you have to understand that there are people that don't understand you and don't want things to change. We have just experienced not too long ago people saying that they want to take things back to the way that they used to be. And in my context, that is crazy because when we go backwards, I think back to Public Enemy making a song in 1985 and 86 called By the Time I Get to Arizona, where they were challenging late Senator John McCain to try to change uh, and vote and make the King holiday a holiday in Arizona. That wasn't that long ago. That wasn't that long ago. So on days like today, when we hopefully come together and acknowledge, um, to me, one of the greatest people to ever walk this earth, I'm reminded of a few things, that sports is a microcosm of where we are as a society. And in a league that's 70% African American, there's one black head coach. And the sad part about it to me is it's not like black coaches don't get chances. It's that they don't get second chances. We get a chance sometimes to succeed, but those black football coaches don't get a chance to fail and get back on the horse and succeed again. That has to stop. So we have to keep pushing, and we have to understand the context that while this is a feel-good day, a lot of times days like this, when you listen to the perspective of other people, it prunes you. It's not about necessarily celebrating. It is about letting you know exactly how far you have to go and how far we have to go and how much we have to actually keep moving in the right direction. You can't rest. You can't rest. Because one thing that I learned when I was young is I had the responsibility. I had the responsibility to do things for myself because I didn't realize, or I thought that asking for something that was just so basic as an acknowledgement of Martin Luther King, that if you have to literally beg for that, then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you should be asking for. You just got to go get it on your own. If we really truly want to understand what this holiday is about, we have to listen to more than the I Have a Dream speech. We have to listen to the things that were behind it. We have to listen to the toughness of him, because I'm going to tell you who he reminds me of. My uncles, my grandfathers, the deacons in our church, the guys who aren't allowed to have coaching jobs, the Caldwells, the Jim Caldwells, who has to do 10 times better than everybody else. That's who those guys remind me of. Dr. King. In Power 5, there are no college football coaches. There aren't very many black football coaches. So we can make the babies who grow up to run the touchdowns, but we can't coach them. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that. So when we celebrate footballs and touchdowns on Saturdays and Sundays, and we eat our wings and we drink our beer and we wear our collective uniforms and T-shirts that match, understand when you are sometimes a person like me and other people that look like me, that there's always something else that you have to feel like you have to do. We really put that stuff aside in order to celebrate the happy moments that hopefully the happy moments will translate into folks seeing the bigger picture. Now imagine when I talk to my kids. I got one granddaughter. She's 7. She ain't paying attention to this. But when I talk to my kids the way you talk to yours about what happened when I was a kid, and I have to tell them about what really occurred to Martin Luther King. My kids are 24 to 31. Yeah, these are the conversations that we have to have. He was murdered trying to change things. So while I'm appreciative of the acknowledgement, I think there's more that needs to be acknowledged, and I'll never stop doing that. And anyone who thinks this is divisive, man, you are just on a whole nother level of not really trying to pay attention. I want to thank you guys for listening to Locked On Jaguars every day. Sometimes things are more important than sports. Sometimes things are more important than football. And just to show you, I'm good either way with Doug Peters or Byron Leftwich. I really am. I really am. But I just want us to, on a day like this, to acknowledge while we're talking about football and talking about the future and talking about the things. Just imagine what it's like to be in the locker room, and just imagine what it's like to have been in the locker room when you were a kid in high school. And I haven't forgotten that people had to beg for this holiday to happen. You guys continue to take care of each other. It's going to be cold here in Jacksonville. I'm still coming back from COVID-19. Not quite 100%. I woke up kind of today on a roller coaster, going up and down. So hopefully we'll continue to progress and get better. My voice will return back to what it's supposed to be. Y'all keep taking care of each other, man. Happy Martin Luther King holiday. Enjoy and continue to watch some of these games and see how these teams play. Another game tonight. You can check it out tonight and see the level of consistency, the level of intensity that has to happen if the Jaguars are ever going to come out of the cellar in the NFL. You guys take care, and we'll talk to you tomorrow here